So I'm happy to introduce our next speaker, maybe, or should we? Our case with streaming? Okay. So I'm happy to introduce our next speaker. Actually, it's the person. Thanks to him, I am here because, well, you know, we've been friends for many years, and he's Greek, and he lives in Finland, and he works at Wargaming. And then the organizers from Greece actually contacted him. Then they went to the White Knights conference, whatever, one thing by another, and that's the great conference we're having here, Athens Games Festival. So, Anastasios Katopodis, please, welcome.
All right, hello everyone. My name is Tassos, not Anastasios. Get things straight right off the bat. So I've been living in Finland since 2002, 2003. And back in 2006, I started working in a company called Digital Chocolate, still dear to my heart, where we did J2ME games. Right after that, I jumped into Nokia for a couple of years, while I still did their applications, and then moved to Rovio, where I was lucky enough to be involved in the early stages of the publishing program of Rovio Stars. I released a couple of games with those, and then I, at the same time, did, from the very beginning of the project, from the demo stage, Angry Birds Epic. These days, along with all the new colleagues, I work in one of the mobile studios of Wargaming, located in Helsinki. Excuse that. During this time, thanks. During this time, I've done everything from localization, QA, to executive production and being a product director. But really, what I feel is the essence of what I do is I'm trying to be nice to people developing mobile games, help them communicate and have fun during the process of developing mobile games. Because it is a rather challenging and difficult endeavor. What I mean by that? In 2016, during the month of March, actually the first half of the month of March, there was nearly 5,000 gaming apps released on the App Store. And the pace has not been taking it slow ever since. I am a mobile guy, and I will stick to speaking about mobile, and that does not mean that I do not respect the competitiveness and know how hard it is on other marketplaces, but mobile is hard, and it's a ridiculously crowded place. It's the nature of things, since mobile platforms had the lion's share of the global games industry's revenues for a while, and well, if you think about it, like starting a production on mobile, the base cost of a production on mobile is, in most cases, lower than on other platforms. It's attractive for many, and that makes, you know, the crowded marketplace. But I'm not saying all these to deter anyone from trying to make a mobile game. I'm not saying that no one should try. But I love to have this little introduction to use it as a filter pointing out to a very simple truth. If you do not love or like mobile games and your heart belongs to other platforms, then your chance of success is limited. So, you know, all the UI money in the world cannot give you retention, and retention is having a well-designed and fun game to play. So in the case you like, love, or even feel passionate about mobile games, then I feel that's half the battle won. Alas, that's just half the battle. Understanding what is fun, what is good, what could make money is important to know, but there is a process that you need to go through to get there, and a lot of people tend to basically leave that out of the conversation. Even I often cringe at the sound of the word process, and what I would like to spend the rest of my minutes here talking about is the process of building a game and understanding how you can do that without losing your wits. And the whole thing starts with demo. I got a fancy quote here. It's all about focus, really. I assume that nobody really has all the time and money in the world when they go about doing a game. So, and the demo time of a project is filtering a lot of that. Demoing is not figuring out what you should do. It's about figuring out what you're good at and what you understand. Demo time is not about experimentation. Do I hate experimentation? No, I do not hate experimentation. I just like well-defined experimentation. Choose the, what do I mean by that? You should choose the genre and things you want to do in advance, and only then make a bunch of versions of that and see what is the very best one of them. Don't waste your times with like including in your demo metagames. You can build metagames on paper or using them fancy flow charts about that. Really, it's metagame ideas during demo time are as good as it's going to be exactly like game X. What you need to put focus on, though, is your core game. And your core game is what your players will have to deal with day in and day out. And them not liking it is not going to build you any retention. Plan and execute well what you do during demo time. And there is no reason why you should see the demo period any different than production. Do what you do well. Do what you do polished. Because if at the end of the process you can keep some of your code, or you don't have to throw away all the artwork that you did during the time, then all the best. Is demo done? Let's say you're feeling quite confident about this, and you're like, well, let's jump into production. No, don't. Please think of taking some time to do the pre-production, aka glorified demo extension. Spend more time thinking how you will do this thing time. And things to do during pre-production. Well, there's a bunch of them. First off, know what you're doing. Write down everything that you need to do. Understand all the features that you want to have in your game to the max. Spend great amounts of time thinking about every little detail, and really, 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 when you're ready, when you know everything about it, plus technical implications, plus all your content assumptions, the great amount of content you want to have when you are releasing your game, then you can make a list. And you can use this list to basically estimate time. I would suggest that each one of these items on your list should use the unit of a 2 weeks period of work, what I will be calling sprint. And that's what you should really focus on when it comes to time, not hours. I'll get to that in a bit. Once you have attached time to every part, every feature of your project, everything that you're planning to do, then you can add up the time and say, like, look, this is going to take me a year or 10 years or 6 months, and it puts you in the position where you can filter that and say, like, well, I'll run out of money if I do 2 years of it, so how about filtering that list? You're going to the second stage of pre-production where you're looking at your list and saying, like, I won't have time to do all that. What is important to do? Well, you can take out a weak feature. Generally speaking, against taking out features from your game, I'd rather cut down on content, take away, the great amounts of content, because at the end of the road, you don't know if your game is going to be successful. You're assuming things all the way to production, all the way through production and to launch. But you could add content during updates if your game survives soft launch. So content is the thing that you need to be looking at first and foremost. Then, plan your features with a cold heart is what I say to my teams, but, cut down on content with an even colder one. And now the part about hours. I said that, don't use hours to estimate the duration of your project, but rather take like the 2 weeks bits. Well, that's because if you think that if you think that a day has 8 hours to it, then you're on your way to the mental hospital. It's never going to be 8 hours. It's never going to be effective 8 hours of work. And you need to take account of a number of things. 2-week sprints, even for something that takes very little time to finish in your head, is a good measure to attach time to. So then, you know, you've done all that. You've got a schedule. It starts somewhere and it ends somewhere. What are the fancy bits that you would like to put in between? Like, you know, alpha, beta, pre-alpha, pre-beta. I've heard it all. I don't care of any of that. Really, I don't. After all these years, I only care about soft launch. Because for a developer, you know, managers could see it in a different way, but for a developer, every sprint, every little chunk of work you put into a project is actually a very important milestone. Your day-to-day job should be done right. You need to hit your goals, your planned work for 2 weeks period of time, and then you're good. You're going to be good. And if you start, excuse me the expression, screwing up that part, then no fancy milestone is going to save things down the road. No alpha or beta is going to fix your broken first, second, third, or fourth sprint. So focus on doing things well. And the second thing is, if you do not get things right and soft launch not good, what point is there to have a global launch date? You probably want to kill your game because, I know it's harsh to hear, there is an associated cost to keeping your game alive. And meaning if it looks really terrible, better go back to the beginning. You know, you made the money that you made, go back to the beginning. Pre-production's done. Production. Well, that's a big one. I mean, I don't even know if I have enough time to speak about all the things I want to speak related to production. But I try to summarize it. Your game is the schedule. Steer according to the needs of your game and not the schedule. Do we get it? No. Good. I got a few words about that. So I don't mean that while you're making your game, you should just go like, whoa, great idea, I'll take that on. I'll make that. I've got a bunch of cool ideas. I'll keep adding them up. Respect the schedule that you did in the beginning, but if you run into trouble, if you have a problem, you need to take the time to think. If a schedule tells you what you should be doing while you're taking the time to think something that is really important and problematic in your project, then it's not a good schedule. And it's not a good schedule because it did not account for the time that you will need to think of your problems. And maybe the other way around. Do not get hung up on decisions. And really, decisions are not hard to make. It's cool to keep an eye on your original plan. You probably made some promises. You probably have planned things out carefully. I do not doubt that. But because of something was originally planned doesn't mean that things will not change along the way. Once you start doing things, usually you find out the truth. And the truth might not be as rosy as you planned it or as you thought of it in the beginning. And you need to have the time, you need to have the spot reserved for thinking and fixing. And if someone of you now says like, well, what if, you know, it's not possible to change direction? Then I'm saying like, you got a problem. You started off this process of thinking because you have a big problem. If you leave the problem be, it's going to kill your game, so better change it, fix it, or stop doing it. Again, I'm being rather harsh, but I'm being very honest about the things I believe about production here. And secondly, there is no methodology that will save you. It's related to decision making. Decisions are not hard to make. Decisions are, you know, something that we have to do every day, and it's no different in a games project. And if somebody says to me, which often this happens, what if people argue all the time? They can't decide. They can't really say or agree what's the best way to go about fixing a problem. Then, you know, remember that. Probably every solution you have on the problem is good enough. Somebody's taking the side of each decision, and you choose the one that's going to make the lives of people less miserable. People need to be happy while developing. And again, no methodology is going to fix that. Now, okay, all right, you've planned everything, and you need to actually log and track the things you do on a day-to-day basis and see what you're going to do the next 2 weeks. Should you use, I don't know, tasks? Should you write down tasks? Should you write down user stories? Should you, use Kanban? Should you use Scrum? Should you use, like, get things done? I don't know. There's a lot of that out there, and there's like many fancy books, and you can get hung up on something, but really the most important thing is like listen to what people understand and what serves people that develop a game best. Because, no matter how hard you try, let's say, to implement Scrum while working on something, if people don't understand how to work with user story, what good is it? And if you're doing tasks, who says you can't use sprints and plan and include tasks? Do whatever serves the purpose best and keeps people away from feeling miserable. And once you choose how you will log and track, then focus on one thing only. Communicate, 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 like there's no tomorrow. Don't keep anything to yourself. Every day, speak about the things you do with other people. When you have the tiniest little question about things, move to the next guy and ask whether he knows the answer. Collaborate, and that's a large part of my job. I live in Finland as well. I hope there's no Finnish people in the audience. People in Finland are not very communicative, and that's why I, make it a big part of my job to like make everybody discuss along the way how they do things so that no one thing is missed. And while communicating, well, be nice. Don't be an ass. If you have a frustration, don't keep it inside you, but once communicating your frustration with the rest of the people, remember to be nice. It's a lot likelier to find a solution to a problem when you're approaching it with an open mind and a nice attitude towards your colleagues than being the manager at the office movie. And, okay, Tassos, you talked to us a lot about like methodologies and stuff and like planning and whatever in production, but is there anything else we need to remember before going out live? Well, I mean, this is what I call boring stuff. Once upon a time, there were titles like executive producer, and people were looking at product management and production as one and the same, but these days we've got the PM stuff. Or, I don't know if they're boring, but, I call them that. It's fun. It makes me deal with it. And the PM stuff. So, boom, boom, boom. Be free to play and not pay to play. Respect your user. It's as simple as that. If you're doing a free-to-play game and not a premium game, then remember to allow players to play the game. Define updates when it makes sense. Well, what good is it to plan your updates during pre-production when you don't know most of your project? Wait for it. Wait for the right moment. Wait when you're cutting down content. Wait when you know which content fits your project. Tools and service integrations, you don't want to go live. There's a lot of solutions out there to begin with, and you need to pick the right one for you. I can't help during the time of this session to give any pointers, and there's no one solution that is the best out there. But you pick your tools and service integrations on mobile carefully, and the one thing that if I filter everything to one and one thing only, which is most important, you don't want to go to global lands without knowing your user behaviors, so track your users, use analytics, and use the analytics that you can understand best. And finally, if you choose to do them ads, then just don't make them annoying interactions. Make them part of your game, make them a feature, make them a reward, make them something fun. You can choose to leave them out, but there's a lot of games that I know of that actually make their money through ads. So that's one thing to consider. Oh, throughout this whole process, remember user interfaces and user experience. I mean, it's important for people to understand what they're going to be spending their time on, and you're not going to save it at the last minute of the project. You can have some time reserved at the end of the project where you're looking at your UI and UX and doing modifications and you're refining things, but it's not going to save it if you forget it and you don't do it throughout your production process. And you might end up having something that looks like that. And that is maybe okay, and some very competitive people on PC can deal with it, but on mobile, you're dead. It's shit. Forget about it. So, it is important. It is the last one. It's the one that I left hidden, but it's the one that should get a lot of attention throughout the process. And, okay, you're lucky. So, you got good LTV, you got good retention, you got ARPU and ARPU that are good, and your players have allowed you to go into global LANs. Now you can have a global LANs like milestone, and you go into global LANs. And whether you're planning to basically UA users into oblivion, or you just hit the jackpot, you just hit the lottery, and you have a lot of downloads without spending a penny, how should you go about doing things? Should you change anything from what you were doing before? Production-wise, back to the methodology stuff, back to the processes stuff? I don't think so. I think you should keep things how they were before. Why fix something that is not broken? What you've chosen serves that the tools, the processes, and the ideas that lie behind production that took you through the very early stages of the project up until this point, then they're probably going to serve you well once you go live. But with a fine-tuning that now you need to listen to your users. And you need to listen to your users really carefully. It can be difficult. It can be difficult because of a lot of the user feedback. The analytics part of the feedback, like you track users' behavior and you make like associated decisions about your game. That's the easy part, but then there's channels as in like social media and like comments. A passionate guy writing a tweet post, or well, I mean, the super rude guy in some forsaken dark corner of the internet in some comments thread. Like, respect that guy too. He has an opinion, and you take all these opinions and you create your content, and your sprints, everything that you do is defined by what people tell you and what their behaviors in the game tell you. Be humble about these guys and keep things fresh with these guys. It's no different than a marriage, really. If you start forgetting to listen, and if you're getting lazy, then you're gonna go bad. This is the beginning of an end for your game. And keeping all these things in mind is not as hard as it sounds. It's just you need to keep things fresh. You need to roll out new content and listen to what people say to you. Once you do that, it's all fine. It's all good. And I hope this has been a little bit helpful to you guys regarding production. I think I was running through it, so I'm pretty much done with the presentation. I've got like one big thank you. That's Finnish, by the way.
It's easier to say
everyone,
thank you in Finnish.
But I think I'm doing a great service to Julia as well, who needs to prepare things for the next speaker.
Thank you very much. Do we have questions? Because I have a few questions, actually, while you're preparing your questions. So you mentioned that soft launch is very important, right? And you cannot make decisions about the games until you soft launched it. Okay, so how long do you think a soft launch should be? So how long is enough?
Minimum 30 days.
30 days?
Yes.
Okay, so, but I guess it's enough to understand if your metrics are good, right?
Yes, I mean, you need a time period that will actually give you a sample of data that you can rely on. Anything less than 30 days, and why I mentioned the 30 days, you can't be sure about. First of all, you know how we keep track of KPIs is the day one returns, so maybe in some cases day 3, day 7, day 30. Before you have day 30, really, you can see a trend, but you can never be sure. Like, put the effort in to wait until 30 days go past, and there's small things you can do during that period, but 30 days is the minimum. After that, I've done a really long soft launch with mediocre metrics during that period. We put a lot of good effort. We listened to the users. We did all that nice stuff that I talked about during live ops. It didn't change things much.
How many users is enough for a soft launch? Like how many people should play the game so that we could find the metrics relevant? Like is 100 people enough? Or like your family playing the game, is it a soft launch? No?
You should ask my manager that, really.
Seriously, what do you think? It's like, and it's an important question, like 1,000 people.
I think, you know, it depends on whether you've got like money reserved for user acquisition, right? Like,
that was my next question. So should
yes.
you buy users during the soft launch, or you should just, you know, look at the organic traffic?
Look, I think that it's possible. It's possible to reserve a budget for that. It is definitely one practice
how
that
many
can be
people?
practiced if there is.
It's just, well, 100 people is irrelevant. This is my answer. So how many people is irrelevant?
I wouldn't go lower than 5,000 people.
5,000?
Personally.
Yeah.
Personally. But that's like a marketing. Look, you know, I deal with production, and there's usually a marketing department who takes care of that. If I look at it from the perspective of a producer, I can give you that answer, right?
As a producer, yes.
Exactly.
So because
but if you're talking to my marketing manager or the marketing department, they might have a different opinion.
Of course.
Right?
But yeah, we're talking about the relevance of the metrics, so that's why.
Just take my opinion with a grain of salt because I don't deal with marketing.
Okay. So 5,000 people, is it downloads or daily active users? Or monthly active users?
Right.
Well, monthly active users for 30 days will be downloads, exactly.
Active.
Okay. And my last question, and now it will be your turn, guys. So when we talk about important metrics, we always mention retention, of course. But speaking about soft launch, what would you think is more important, retention or ARPDAU, for example? Should you test ARPDAU during soft launch, or retention is what you're looking at?
I personally consider retention important.
Okay, but yeah.
And that is because you can work the rough edges of your game, and you can listen to the feedback that we talked about a bit earlier. But if the users are leaving your game, you've got a very small window of time to turn things around, if any.
But what if retention is good? Then you decide, okay, soft launch was successful. Let's make a worldwide release, right? And then that's when you will have to buy traffic. I mean, anyways, right? And then you realize,
unless you're Flappy Bird.
Okay,
or like, Angry Birds.
Well, unless
or
you...
a number of other games. Just saying.
Okay. Yeah. So the question basically is, should we look deeply into the ARPDAU metrics during the soft launch, or it's more important, in your opinion, after the worldwide release?
You can extend the soft launch in order to test these assumptions regarding ARPDAU and ARPU. Yeah.
And maybe there is an idea that it's common to make a soft launch. Like before, people used to make soft launch in Canada and Australia mostly. Right now, there are other countries involved. Like, for example, I know that Finnish companies sometimes do soft launch in Finland.
Yeah, they like that.
Yeah, Russian companies, we do like making a soft launch in Russia. And actually, it makes sense because the market is quite large and you can, see how people behave. And by the way, today, in the end of the day, there will be a session about the Russian market and its opportunities. So, but then again, like Russians do not pay as much as Americans do. So even though retention might be relevant, but any metrics concerning, spendings, not so much.
Country? Country? Thank you. That was very insightful.
Yeah,
that was really good.
That's what I do today. So I ask questions and then I answer them myself, right?
Very good. Like, I no comment. That was fantastic.
Okay. Tassos can answer your questions if you have any. Okay.
So, hi. I'm asking a question as an external to this market, to the scene. You've spoken a lot about, buying users, about, all these marketing techniques, as well as you suggested to the developers, to the producers, to keep always in mind that they might have to kill the game. if something doesn't work, you know? This is an option. But for the smaller studios, I assume, like for the independent developers, this is not an option, I assume, because independent developers, that's all they have. If they kill it...
It is an option. It should be the option.
Okay, let me ask my question then.
Yes.
Both of you can answer. Okay. So, do you see a future for startups that do not have significant financial backing in order to adopt this methodology, this specific process on how to produce in game that you suggest hereby? That's my question.
Okay, there's a part where you need to look into the accumulated experience of your team. That's one bit of it. Whether you have done something on mobile before or not. But essentially, I wasn't telling people off, like I said, like they should not be doing mobile because it's very dangerous and they should be harsh with themselves and kill. Rather, when you're in the beginning of the process, when you're thinking that I'm going to be releasing something, take account of your budget really carefully. And you think that at some point of the process, things are going terribly well, stop and think, can I plan another project with a remaining budget? Or if you've reached all the way to soft launch, maybe it's a good idea when you plan things that you haven't used all the money that you got for funding. I mean, I have not seen cases of successful production processes where you have $10 on the side and you use all of them to produce a game. If you don't have enough funding or personal funds to start this, it's a problem to discuss in the very beginning.
Speaking about killing projects, it's actually as important for indie studios as it is for big studios. Why? Because, okay, you're an indie developer, you have one game you're working on, right? But if the game is bad, and it can be bad, for example, like you make a soft launch and you understand that people do not like it, like retention is bad, people try it and they do not come back. There is no, like, of course, you should try to improve it for a while, right? But there is no point to keep working on it for like many years to come. Better kill it and start another game, or transform it into something that, you know, might be more successful. Because, you know, it doesn't matter if you're rich or poor or whatever, right? If the game is bad.
I might have sounded harsh, but essentially what I'm saying is that if you're in debt, right? Like, I mean, you had some money and you lost it all. Don't go get a credit card and start like charging it.
What should you do in that case?
Well, basically,
go find a normal job?
No, you can start from the very beginning. You can do, if you are passionate enough, you're going to start the whole process from the beginning, including finding money to do the next project.
Well, sometimes it's always better to have some money on your own, of course, to start any project. Sometimes if the timing is bad, then, you know, you might go find a normal job, you know, for a while, and then you'll still have to make a game, because those people who are passionate about game development, they can never leave. It's like once you enter it, there's no way back.
Anyone has a question about like production methodologies?
If anyone has a question about production methodology, you can ask Tassos privately, because the session is over. I'm sorry, I gave all the answers I wanted.
Fine. Thank you, thank you. That was
so yeah,
nice.
He's here. Thank you very much, Kitas.
Ole hyvä.